Is the NAACP way past its prime? Does the NAACP represent the best interest of people of color? I'm going to be honest with you. I have like some real issues with the NAACP, not only in their lack of visibility in a lot of these major issues as far as blue on black crime, as far as their visibility in advocating candidates because of positions on campaign finance, voting rights, etc. But in this particular clip, I think they not only missed the bus, I think they never got out of bed, put their clothes on, got something to eat, and walked down to the bus station to catch the bus. Charter schools are a huge, huge positive as far as the minority community is concerned. And with 90% of our public schools failing our people, black people, Hispanic people, hell, they even fail, the white people. Charter schools are an absolute necessity. No parent is going to send their kid for long, to a failing charter school. And are there some bad ones? Absolutely there are. But there are a hell of a lot more good ones than bad ones. What the NAACP should have been concentrating on is going after the bad ones and supporting the good ones. People are voting with their wallets. People are trying to get their kids into these good charter schools so that they can get the education that their kids need and deserve. Public schools are more and more basically just holding cells, and holding cells is a bad word. They're just placekeepers to babysit kids from 1st through 12th grade. They are not performing the function that they are supposed to. Anytime you can have any child that's graduating from a public school and can't handle the basic skills of reading, writing, and math, something is wrong. What that something is, in my opinion, it's lack of accountability for the teachers. Now, true enough, a student needs to come in there, they need to be prepared to learn. So that means a good night's sleep, that means food in their stomach, that means, decent apparel, so that the external factors that would distract that child from learning are pushed to the side so that the child can concentrate on learning. Well, hell, if you're in poverty, that, full stomach might be an issue. The apparel might be an issue. The kid may have already been consumed mentally by his day-to-day circumstances before he even gets into the school. So I'm not dismissing that, but I'm saying, let's say that all of those factors are taken care of. Well, now it's the teacher, and there are a lot of great teachers in the public school system. My wife worked in the public school system, so I'm not going to denigrate all of the teachers in the public school system, but their job is to move students as far as administration is concerned. The teacher's job is to teach, but the school administration wants to move students, and they're more concerned about the funds that they get per child than anything else. And I'm just going to tell you, I've seen it. But anyway, I'm on a tirade here, and I need to stop. The representative from the Washington branch of the NAACP, he is a poor example of a person who is supposed to be a person that is looking out for the best interest of our black children. And I'm going to concentrate on our black children. This guy is in the pocket of the teachers' unions. And when he was faced up by an owner of a charter school and a director of a charter school, he tried to dance around that situation, and I'm going to point it out as he does so. Okay, here we go with the segment.
No new charter schools. That's the request from the NAACP at the National Convention in Cincinnati. A resolution was approved calling for a moratorium on the expansion of charter schools. The resolution reads in part, charter schools have contributed to the increased segregation rather than diverse integration of our public school system, and that weak oversight of charter schools puts students and communities at risk of harm, public funds at risk of being wasted, and further erodes local control of public education. The resolution reaffirms the 2014 resolution. The NAACP opposes the privatization of public schools and are public subsidizing or funding of for-profit or charter schools. Of course, it will not become official policy for the NAACP until its national board meeting later this fall. But so many charter schools are actually doing well. More than 3 million kids across the country are actually in charter schools. The question is this sound policy for African Americans? Joining us in the studio, Washington Bureau Director of the NAACP, Hillary Sheldon, via FaceTime, Dr. Steve Perry, founder and head of schools for Capital Preparatory Schools, and also joining us via FaceTime, President of Democrats for Education Reform, Shavar Jeffries. So, Hillary, this particular resolution was offered from the floor. Was it a particular state, or did it come from the board?
It was from a particular state. The way our system is set up, any member of the NAACP in good standing can submit a resolution to be considered by the national organization at our national convention. This came up through the normal process of review and onto the floor of our convention just 2 weeks ago.
But here's the question. If you look at right now, look, I'm a school choice supporter. If you look at what's happening in Harlem, you got thousands, 20,000 parents on waiting lists to get into charter schools. Steve Perry had a school there in Hartford, Connecticut. Thousands on the waiting list as well. Sounds to me like parents, especially black parents, are saying they want the option. And in fact, we did a poll here. Cornell Belcher, Democratic pollster, did this. 72% of black parents favor charter schools. Is the NAACP out of step with black folks?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, we're looking at exactly what's happening in charter schools. About 18 years ago, we came out with our first position on charter schools. And what we said was charter schools need to be at least the minimum standard of any public school. What we had during those times and thereafter were charter schools that were being put in place in many places to undercut many of the policies and protections civil rights has provided. Things like, for instance, making sure that teachers at least have a degree and are certified before they teach. That's a minimum standard. Many charter schools went around that and even hired teachers without degrees at all, creating all kinds of other problems. We had charter schools that were carpetbaggers. That is, they'd come in, and before they could figure out that the charter school was not providing the service, the charter school was gone. But look, you're right. There are some charter schools that have proven effective. But if you go back and talk to the assistant secretaries for civil rights in the Department of Education, the last two, you'll find all the suits that have been filed because charter schools are being utilized in places like Mississippi, Alabama, and North Carolina as tools to maintain segregation. So in essence, that's why we're calling for a moratorium. We've got to take a closer look at this. There's a big problem with how these schools are being utilized in so many areas. And we can point to a few. There's a good one in New York that seems to be showing good results. There's a couple of schools other places, few good results, but just a few.
All right, let me stop that there because he was filibustering. Okay, he never answered the question that Roland placed to him, which was, are black people, or is the NAACP out of step with black people on charter schools? The answer is yes, the NAACP is out of step. What he did was try to defend the NAA's position on charter schools, not whether they were in or out of step with black families schooling their children. And then he's going to throw, which Roland's going to get on him right now. He's trying to insinuate that there are only a few, okay, charter schools. Okay, a few is a diminutive word. There are a lot of charter schools that are doing a great job. All right, here's Roland getting on him about his use of the word few.
Oh, I won't say few. I mean, I can show you a number of schools. Steve Perry, I want to go to you. Your reaction to this resolution?
They couldn't be more out of touch if they ran full speed in the other direction. Americans are deciding with their feet that they want to go to better schools, and how dare the national office of the NAACP show that they're out of touch even with their own chapters. In fact, as I travel around the country, some of the biggest proponents of school choice are NAACP local chapters. They're the ones who bring people like you and me rolling in to talk about, guess what? The same thing. This is just another example of it's more proof that the NAACP has been mortgaged by the teachers union. And they keep paying y'all to say what they want to say. They recognize one of the first things he mentioned was the teachers. You want to know what happens when we don't have to go through the rules of certification? We're able to hire the 5 black males that I'm able to hire to be faculty here at Capital Prep in Bridgeport. That's 5 black males, 3 of whom went to Morehouse, which has no education school unless they go over to Spelman. So I'm able to bring in African Americans to teach African American children in the African American community, in which 90% of children are reading, writing, and doing math below grade level, brother. If you really will children, then you recognize that it's not a few schools. In fact, it's more the rule than not. If you look at the Credo study, one of the things that you find out is that the group that is most benefiting from school choice in general and charters in specific are African American males. You want to stop the school to prison pipeline? Then stop sending black boys to failed schools that keep funding the NAACP through teachers union dues, man. If you're
Exactly. It's insanity to do the same thing over and over again and to expect a different result. So continuing to send our black youth to fail public schools is only going to give us the same failed result, i.e., more than likely, the cradle to prison pipeline with a stop off in the public schools. It is already suggested, I can't say a proven fact, so I will say suggested, that black male youths coming through these charter schools have a much greater chance for success in life and to stay out of the criminal justice system. Why? Because they have structure, because there is an actual demand for excellence within the majority of these charter schools, which Steve Perry runs one of the most successful charter school systems in the country. So he knows what he's talking about. This guy, Hillary Sheldon, is just a shrill for the NAACP, which, as he indicated, Steve indicated, garners a tremendous amount of financial support from the teachers union. Why? Because the teachers union needs students for that money to keep coming in so that their teachers can be employed so that they can get those union dues.
really focused on.
Hold on, Steve, Hillary.
Well, first, it's probably a good idea to set aside who's being paid by who, especially since he works for a charter school and pays his salary.
Okay, so now that's disingenuous because, yeah, Steve does work for a charter school. Actually, I take that back. He owns a charter school. Your organization is taking money from the teachers union. So you needed to be quiet about that one, because if we're going to use your example, we know that you're biased for the teachers union and for public schools. So your argument is a false one.
That's not a good idea for this conversation.
No, actually, he runs, I mean, he's an owner. He doesn't work for one.
No, he owns it. Exactly.
Gotcha.
He makes a living. Exactly.
Yeah.
But thank you very much. Not a good idea to talk about who's paying who for what.
But you work for the NAACP, so do we therefore undermine what you're saying?
No, I'm just trying to say what our policy positions are, and I
And the
appreciate
NAACP who's taking almost $500,000 from the teachers, and therefore say that you don't have credibility?
Let me just say that the issue very well is how these charter schools are being run. That's the issue on the table, I thought. I thought the idea was to take a good look at what's been happening. I've talked to both Russell and Alley from the Department of Education, who's the undersecretary who actually oversees enforcement of civil rights of our schools across the country, including charter schools. I'm telling you exactly how this stuff is worked. Secondly, if we look at the school,
I guess he made the point. He doesn't know, and he didn't turn around and say, yes, I do. The reason he doesn't know is because he's never spoken to any of these black charter school owners to get their perspective. That's going to get busted later on in this segment.
would utilize the places where the suits were filed, in places like Mississippi and Alabama and others, what you'll see is that indeed there was discrimination.
But here's a question. Why not call for a moratorium in those states as opposed to a
national? Why not call for a moratorium? No, Roland. Why not call for a moratorium of the traditional schools in which over 90% of children can't read, write, or do math? Why? Because those teachers' associations are paying y'all. Come on, man. You understand your credibility has completely been impugned because your own local chapters don't support you.
Hold on 1 second.
He got a point. Why not go for a moratorium on the areas where the schools are failing? That ain't going to fly because that's going to put not necessarily put teachers out of work because they're not calling for a closure, but that means that there are going to be no additional spots for teachers to work in public schools if there is an actual nationwide moratorium. Excellent point. Excellent point. Steve ain't no dummy.
Shavar, wanted to jump in here, then we'll go back to Hillary. Shavar?
Well, I want to say a few things. One is I think this conversation will be more fruitful. We get past some of these character attacks. Steve is a legendary educator of our children, and NAACP over history has been one of the best proponents of civil rights in our community.
You know something? That over history gets tired real fast. That's, these guys are resting on their laurels from the 1960s and 70s. This is 2016. They need to show us some concrete accomplishments within the last couple of years. And I got to tell you, they are definitely wanting as far as that's concerned. Now, I can say that the NAACP Legal Defense Fund has done some good work, i.e. Filing suit in various states attacking the voter suppression laws, which is what I call them. But the NAACP itself, they have not really done a lot, as far as I'm concerned, for at least the past 20 years. And this may be why. The source of funds that they receive basically has colored their position and moved them from a position of being for the people, colored people, black people, to a position of support of various unions, of which the only one that they really don't support is the police union, which is one of the most powerful unions across the country. But as far as the teachers union is concerned, in my humble opinion, they're in their pockets.
But that said, charter schools have proven themselves throughout this country to change the lives of children of color. In many of our cities, they're a beacon of hope. The Credo Institute that was referenced earlier, that report shows that in the largest cities in the United States, the public charter schools are the best performing public schools in those cities, and are frankly reversing achievement gaps in some cities where frankly some of the kids of color are outperforming white kids in the suburbs. And so anything that works for children, we have to be able to support. We've in many of our cities for decades, our traditional public schools have failed our children, failed our communities. Do we have some excesses with some charter schools? Sure. Do we have even more excesses in many traditional public schools as well? Of course we do. And so wherever we find bad practice, we have to regulate that. But overall, public charter schools throughout this country are doing tremendous work for our young people, particularly our young children of color, and we absolutely need everyone who cares about kids of color to support those schools are doing a great job for our babies.
Hillary?
Of the challenges we have with charter schools. Now, I'm not saying some of them aren't doing well, some of them are. Some we've heard of as good examples of even what local public schools can do as well. But when charter schools are being utilized as a tool of segregation, when charter schools are being utilized as a tool to actually undereducate our children by putting teachers in place that have no degree, that have not been certified, then we have a problem. And those are the kind of charter schools we want to make sure do not continue to operate throughout our society. What we're calling for is a moratorium to be able to
There's
study
really an
the issue to
overstatement,
make
though. I
sure
mean,
to
a lot of these premises Hillary is relying upon, frankly, are myths, and there's very little evidence to support that. Are there some extraordinary excesses? Yes, but the data shows that overall, the charters are hiring highly qualified, competent educators who are doing a great job for our kids.
Steve?
You know, in addition to that, it's against the law to have even less than a majority. So in places like New York City, over 75% of the faculty have to be certified. Now, if certification were important, then the schools that have 95 and 100% of children who can't read, write, or do math at grade level, yet have 100% that are certified, would be the problem. See, what happens is he's just speaking from the teachers union hymnal. That's all he's doing. This is not about what's good for children. It's not about what the parents are doing. You mentioned earlier, Roland, we ran a school that wasn't a charter school in Hartford, Connecticut. Over 2,700 children were on the waiting list. Their parents were making micro-political decisions. They were saying they know what's best for themselves. And right now, Roland, as you and I speak, I'm in a school. I'm in a charter school in a city, which is Bridgeport, which 94% of children are reading, writing, doing math at low grade level. They always talk about us taking money from the traditional schools. We receive $11,000 per pupil. The school up the street, which is closed, by the way, for the summer because, you can't have them open during the summer. The same school in which every child who goes into those schools every single day during the school year is patted down, those schools receive $15,000 per pupil and $100 million for a building. We get zero. Yet and still, our children right now in the room right on the other side of this wall are learning math. They have blazers and ties on because their parents are tired of it. Our children are part of the revolution, and it's high time that the NAACP woke up and recognized that this is our community. It's about the CP, not about the AFT and the NEA.
Well, let me just say once again, we want to make sure that the charter schools live up to the standards that are set out by our civil rights laws we fought so hard for.
You see, that's bullshit. See, he's using one argument to defeat another argument. Excuse me. Okay, what is the primary argument here? And that's what we have to decide. Is the primary argument educating our kids, or is the primary argument segregation? All right. He's pitting one argument against the other. He is saying that because charter schools are segregated, i.e., when a charter school opens up, black parents want to rush to get their kid into that school that's going to do the best for their kid. And because that particular charter school is servicing the black community, he is now using the excuse that it is segregated, okay? Therefore, they want to stop the segregation. In that particular case, where a charter school is vastly superior to a public school, okay, the separate but equal line doesn't work. It doesn't work. Your argument against separate but equal doesn't work. The separate, in this particular case, is superior to the desegregated schools. But he basically can't see that, or his leadership or organization can't see that. If something is happening that is a plus, a positive for the black community, and obviously the majority of charter schools are, why is the NAACP fighting against it? There can be only one reason. That is the money that they're receiving from the teachers union. It is not a question of segregation. That is ridiculous. If you are really for the betterment of our children, and these charter schools are proven winners, instead of calling for a moratorium on the charter schools, you should call for an expansion on the opening of charter schools with the proper oversight and proper monitoring to make sure that the charter schools are providing the service that is being paid for. People are not stupid. If they see that their kid is getting jammed up in public school, but other parents are seeing their kids doing well, exceedingly well in charter schools, people are going to move their kids to the charter schools. That's just it in a nutshell. The public schools are not performing, especially for our black children. They're not performing. This guy is just pissing me off more and more. The more he opens his mouth, the more he pisses me off because he's wrong.
Excuses for not being able to
Do
meet
you
those
apply those same standards to the failed schools?
We want to make sure that every single school at least has what our children desire. In other words, a charter school should not start at the bottom, even below the floor for public schools, but should start at that floor and move up from there.
That's bullshit. Now, see, now he's trying to, what he's saying there is because the majority of teachers within charter schools have to be certified. So that would be 51%. So the other 49 don't necessarily have to be certified. But in public schools, 100% of the schools are teachers, I'm saying 100, 95% of the teachers are certified. You have a higher number of certified teachers turning out a vastly inferior product. Stevie Wonder, can make a decision as far as that's concerned. I would rather send my child to a school that is certified, the school itself being certified, but not necessarily all of the teachers, if there are proven results. And charter schools have shown proven results. So this guy is spitting in our faces and trying to tell us it's raining.
You said the floor. Are you speaking of funding? What are you speaking of?
Standards and curriculum.
There's just no evidence of that. I mean, honestly, these are just...
Go ahead.
These are just, and I respect Hillary and I respect NAACP deeply, but these are frankly tall tales.
What are you talking about?
There's very limited evidence of...
Steve, one second, Steve.
Let me finish.
Steve, one second.
There's very limited evidence of some of the things Hillary's talking about in terms of public charter schools not meeting standards for kids. In fact, the public charter schools are generally outperforming standards for young people. And that's exactly why parents throughout our community, black, low-income families in our cities, they are flocking to charters. The parents are smart. They know what they're doing. So they know these schools are changing the lives of their kids, and that's why they're embracing them in tremendous numbers.
So here's my question. Before the national board votes on this, are you going to bring in a pair? Are you going to bring in a Bishop Jenkins' charter school in Dallas? Are you going to bring in the countless black churches across the country who actually have charter schools? African Americans who I have personally met. In fact, we're sitting right here in D.C. Will you bring in Donald Hintz, who runs an extensive charter school here, network here in D.C., African American, one of the most effective charter school networks in America? Will the board do that?
Well, let me say a couple of things.
Let me answer that question before you have to listen to all of his spin. The answer is no.
What the board has already done is, this is a resolution that's coming up from our membership. The way things work for us at a very democratic, small D-based organization is, again, any member of the NAACP.
No.
Okay, here's Roland. He's going to try again. I got to give it to Roland. He's going to try to stay on it to get an answer out of him, which he's not going to be able to, and I already gave you the answer. The answer is no.
Have the resolution. What I'm saying is,
yes.
Are you going to bring in black folks who run charter schools to get their perspective?
Let me first start out by saying 2,200 black folks voted on this thing at our convention week before last. A lot of research has been done on a number of studies. Look at the Pew Foundation study, as a matter of fact. Look at the Department of Education study as well, honey.
All right, so he didn't answer the question again. Here comes Roland for a third crack at it.
But are you going to bring in black people? No, black people who run charter schools to get their perspective. African Americans, I can give you a list
Well, let me just say we'd be happy to just take your list. I can give you a list of those who've already been considered. When the resolution is written and the information came forward by those who move forward, many studies were looked at before we got to this point.
Here's what I'm saying.
Okay, Roland is going for attempt number 4. He's trying to stay on him, and it's obvious that Hillary Sheldon is not going to answer his question.
I'm saying the NAACP, if the NAACP National Board is going to vote on a resolution calling for a moratorium on charter schools, I think the NAACP to talk to black people who are actually running charter schools, who are creating those schools for the benefit of educating black kids.
Well, let me say the charter schools have been reviewed at every level, not only from the level of African Americans, but also from the level of white Americans in our society as well.
Hillary, y'all might want to talk to black charter school operators. That's all I'm saying.
And we have.
Can you count up to 6? Hillary never answered the question. They, in my opinion, they've never had any of the successful charter school operators in to speak before the NAACP. Why is that? They only are getting one side of the story, and that's the teachers union side of the story. They're not getting the charter school side of the story.
Hillary, just to change it up real quick, you mentioned a couple of times that that part of the resolution, or the motivation for the resolution, was that charter schools are being used in certain states that you mentioned as tools of segregation. Can you elaborate on that just a little bit?
Yes, indeed. Much like was studied in the 1960s, when schools were put in receivership and having to integrate, one of the things that happened is tools are being utilized to create academies, as they called them during those days. Some very similar things that have been done very recently. I've had many conversations with the Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights at the Department of Education, and the suits that have had to been filed because charter schools were actually being set up in areas, Mississippi, Alabama, North Carolina, and a couple other places and whatnot. They were set up, but then they were utilized as tools to prevent African Americans.
But just to quickly follow up on that. Sorry, Steve.
Real quick, I'm over time here. Real quick.
Yes, very
why not address those specific schools instead of across the board?
That's why I asked. Why do a national moratorium with those specific states?
We've been very actively involved in those lawsuits, but we're seeing it's much more broad than we might think. We have a number of good charter schools that are being pointed to here, and that's great. We're not calling for an elimination of charter schools. Keep in mind, we're talking about a moratorium. Before more charter schools
a national moratorium.
Correct. Correct. National 50 states.
So why would you call for a 50-state moratorium if the argument is that it's being used in specific states?
And a number of states across the country it has, but not just there. Even in Wisconsin, we had major problems and whatnot with charter schools, and we did invite those that created those schools in Wisconsin to come and talk to us. So the bottom line is that it's not limited to just 1 or 2 states.
Okay, did you hear what he said? Number one, he wants to do a 50-state moratorium when he has a problem that's in a limited area, 3, I guess, southern states, and now we just mentioned Wisconsin. And he invited the Wisconsin charter school creators that are having the problem that he indicates to come to speak to them. Why wouldn't the NAACP invite the successful charter school operators to come in and speak before them? The answer is because they don't want the other side of the story, the successful side of the story, to be told. Mr. Shelton is full of crap, and you can I mean, it's Stevie Wonder can see that this guy has got one point of view and one point of view only. He constantly refers to the Department of Education and other federal agencies. He's not talking to the people on the ground. Okay, if there's a problem in Mississippi and Alabama, you need to focus on that problem specifically. But you're going to turn around and give a cure to somebody in New York that doesn't have an issue. There's no reason for that. There's just no reason for that. Well, again, maybe there is a reason for that, and it might be payola.
The moratorium, all we're saying is, let's take a good look. Before we set up another charter school, let's make sure that everything is in place, and the kind of discrimination that we've been experiencing is not something that carries forward.
See, and by the moratorium, what that does, it basically restricts the supply of education. The demand obviously is outstripping the supply, so if you control the supply, or stop the increase in the supply, the people with the demand have no choice but to go to the piece of crap schools, okay? If you don't allow any more charter schools to open, which is exactly what should be done, so that those thousands of students have an opportunity to get the best education possible, and force those same students into substandard schools, you're doing a disservice to us as black people and to the people of this country, because you could have some outstanding students that, if given the right tools, could become tremendous assets to the society. But then you turn around and stick them in a piece of crap schools, and and they fail because of the piece of crap schools. They're not being challenged. The teachers suck. The facilities are below par, i.e. the Detroit school system. Then, that's just a prescription for failure. And this guy, he is a shrill. He's just a shrill for the NAACP, which is, as Steve indicated, they basically are the front people for the teachers union in this particular case.
20 seconds, Shavar, 20 seconds.
I mean, he's already shown his true colors. We recognize that they haven't done the research and they're not listening to what the African American community is saying. So they're showing how out of touch that they are. Sad but true. We on the other side are going to fight our behinds off to make sure that more children get access to quality education, regardless of it's charter, traditional, or homeschool. Whatever is required to make sure African American children get access to quality education.
Shavar, 20 seconds, go.
There are a handful of states that have very bad charter authorization, and we would love to partner with NAACP and anybody to hold those schools accountable. But we would also love to partner with NAACP to hold traditional public schools that have failed black and brown families for decades accountable as well.
All right.
The bottom line is the majority of public charter schools are doing great things for our kids. There are some that aren't, and we'll work with anybody to hold any school accountable to do the right thing for our kids.
All right, folks, we'll leave it right there. It was not the last time we had this conversation.
You ain't lying, but they need, the NAACP is on the wrong side of this one. That's just it in a nutshell.